Hello, this is Nick McTavish, and this is Game Engine Programming 2 Milestone 1. I'll be demonstrating an FBX converter and a model viewer. The FBX converter uses these two components of an archiving system to pack together all of... gotta delete that. To pack together all of this, except for this, together into a set of archive files, one per FBX model, which are then used by the model viewer. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, the reason why I've excluded this is because it is not packed in automatically, because it doesn't seem to be listed in Warbear's list of textures. So instead in my program, I just have the Polar Bear TGA already over in the model viewer's directory, and it loads it separately, and it uses it for texture swapping, which I'll demonstrate eventually. Now I've got a batch file here. Let's take a look at that, which runs the command line commands to convert each of the FBX files in this directory into an archive, but also a text file. The text file is just the text output generated by the process. So I'm going to run the batch file, and let's take a look at one of these. Let's have a look at Warbear. Everybody likes Warbear. So here you see the file name. All of this is unmodified from the text output code that was given to us. The important part is at the bottom, where you have the triangle lists and page up, and the vertex lists. Okay, don't need these anymore. And now I'm going to transfer these over to the model viewer. Move and replace. And now I'll run the model viewer. As you can see, we have the Space Frigate, Warbear, Astro Boy, and the buggy. I use the arrow keys to move the camera around, left and right bracket keys to move between models, and the minus and equal keys to zoom in and out from between 1 and 10 times the radius of the bounding sphere. And you will notice that the camera is centered on the bounding sphere and not the model, because otherwise being right up against the bounding sphere would be impossible. Now you might notice there's something else over here. What is this? Why? It's a Warbear riding a giant space frigate. I had to have instances of at least 2 models, so what better excuse than to have a giant Warbear on a giant space frigate. Now, I also have texture swapping in this model viewer. I can press the 1 key to change Warbear from a brown bear to a polar bear, and back again. And then I have my 2 key set up to change this particular instance of the space frigate from its normal texture to the pink checkerboard default texture. And speaking of the default texture, let's see what happens when I run a conversion without the proper texture packed in. By renaming this, the Astro Boy archive is not going to have the proper texture. So now I'm going to run the batch file again. And if this works correctly, then when I load the model viewer again, Astro Boy should be lacking his proper texture. Cut and paste, move and replace, and now let's run it. And indeed, Astro Boy is now skinned with the default texture. For my final trick, I will be showing, as required, key sections of code. So here in the here in the FBX converter, let's see if I can move this. That's better. My magic begins right here, which is after everything else. This is the end of the code that was provided to me. So I added this part where I just take the data that was already gathered by other means, and I pack it into first BLO chunks using the vodka program. So see here, I'm going to call it a .vertex chunk, and then I use vodka to change that .vertex into a .vertex chunk.blo. And then I do the same with the texture for the model. If they had more than one texture listed, they would all go together into one chunk, but for some reason even the ones that have multiple textures, like Warbear, only listed one texture. Oh well. So, you get a vertex chunk and you get a texture chunk, and then I use LIU to archive them together into an SPU.